You are on.
Excellent. So the meeting of the Committee on Parent and Community Engagement of the Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Director Leonard,
Here.
Director O'Halloran,
Here.
Director Simpson,
Present.
Director Taylor,
In attendance.
and Chair Garcia.
Present.
We have 5 present.
So at this time, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Buenas tardes. Esta junta escolar se transmitirá en español para aquellas personas que lo necesiten. Para escuchar esta junta en español, por favor marque el número 312-626-6799. Repito, marque el número 312-626-6799 y ponga el número de identificación o código para esta junta que es 453-049-1735. Repito, el número de identificación y código para esta junta es 453-049-1735. Gracias. Thank you.
Gracias. The chair will now ask the secretary to lead us in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. I remind members to please keep your devices muted to avoid interference.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Pursuant to Board Rule 1.06, this meeting is being conducted virtually. Board members, however, may be participating in person from the Central Services Building. In order to allow as much public access and participation as possible, this meeting is being broadcasted via live stream on the MPS website and on the MPS YouTube stream, the links to which may be found on the MPS website and on the Boardcast page. For each of our items of business, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. Individuals who wish to speak on tonight's items were required to register in advance. I ask those that are waiting to speak to remain on the platform until you are called upon to speak. Just as a reminder, Robert Rules of Order dictates that all comments should be directed to the chair of the committee. Also, any questions or requests are to be directed towards the chair, who will determine the most effective way to address them. All speakers are asked to state their name and spell their last name before proceeding with the comments. Each speaker will have 2 minutes and 15 seconds to speak. After a speaker's time is up, they may continue to follow the meeting at one of the broadcast options mentioned previously. To ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind, including inappropriate language, will not be tolerated. The chair reserves the right to remove anyone engaging in such behaviors from the platform. Those removed from the platform may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. However, he or she will not be allowed to rejoin the platform. Written testimony may be submitted to the Office of Board Governance at P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin 53201-2181, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Also, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting the meetings, agenda, and meetings page on the MPS website and choosing online agendas. Madam Secretary, what is the first item of business?
Madam Chair, the first item on tonight's agenda is the report with possible action regarding discipline disproportionality and progress. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Thank you. Will the administration please present the item?
Yes, Chair Garcia and members of the committee, Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. The item before you on this evening's agenda is the monthly report regarding discipline disproportionality, updates, and progress. Mr. John Jagman will provide an overview of the progress and guide us through the PowerPoint presentation, and after which we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Mr. Jagman.
Thank you. Chair Garcia, members of the committee, John Jagman, District Discipline Manager. First, we are going to center ourselves in the 5 priorities for success. We are specifically looking at improving district and school culture and how that leads towards increased academic achievement and accountability. First, this school year, we're going to slightly update our presentation monthly and look at these 4 priority focus areas that are outlined here that are kind of structuring our plan for the school year. The 4 focus areas for this school year will be providing proactive supports and interventions, strengthening student, staff, and community collaboration, reconceptualizing the role of school leaders within discipline, and developing staff integration of courageous conversations about race. So I'm now going to go through those 4 focus areas, starting with providing proactive supports and interventions. We're going to be looking at what we are looking to address this school year into these focus areas. So first, we are going to provide coaching and professional development to school-based teams and individual staff members, improve classroom and school climate through best practices from the Culture, Climate, and Alternatives to Suspension Toolkit, looking at continued implementation of 6 best practices to address disproportionality, and student mental health services and support. So what is that going to look like in our schools? We're going to be supporting school PBIS and building intervention teams throughout the district. We have shared the Culture, Climate, and Alternatives to Suspension Toolkit, and we have updated and shared a directory of support that this school year includes a menu of all professional development from various teams around culture and climate. We are going to continue with documentation of classroom strategies within Infinite Campus. Looking at last school year, the top strategies captured in Infinite Campus included one-on-one conversations with students, acknowledging students verbally, parent contact, redirection of behaviors, utilizing a buddy classroom, and having restorative conversations with students. Also within this first focus area are identified Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions within the PBIS framework. You can see here the total number of interventions for the 2021-2022 school year at the Tier 2 and Tier 3 level. We had 2,255 check and check out, 493 individualized check and check out, 1,523 social academic instructional group, 173 behavior assessment intervention plans, 205 FBA BIP, 57 educational wraparound, and 63 renew. Our second focus area is strengthening student, staff, and community collaboration. This is going to include support student discipline committees and focus groups across the 30 traditional middle and high schools, facilitate our quarterly community conversations, develop and implement a feedback response system to engage the students and community in feedback, and recruit community organizations to volunteer in our identified schools. We're going to continue to implement our student voice plan with monthly reporting to school and district leaders, and we will be creating that feedback response system to ensure that we are responding to students and they are aware of our next step. We will have our student leadership summit in the fall and in the spring, as in years past. And last year, we started those student focus groups. We're going to be implementing those at the beginning of the school year and at the end of the school year, engaging students in conversations at the school level. Our third focus area is reconceptualizing the role of school leaders within discipline. Looking at implementation of alternative suspension and behavior interventions with school leaders, utilizing restorative discipline, engagement with professional development and coaching on the disciplinary process itself, engagement of regional leadership and school leaders with a monthly data evaluation process. Within this third focus area is when we're going to be presenting our usual monthly data. For this August report, we are just looking at last school year's data points. Going forward, we will have that monthly data point as we had last year. That is within this third focus area. So here you can see our district demographics for last school year. When we look at disproportionality, we see that 51% of students identify as Black, whereas end of year, 81% of our suspensions were for Black students. Here we have our total suspensions for each racial demographic. We have total suspensions and then unique students suspended. So those are different individual students where you can see some students have more than one suspension. That's why we have those different numbers. But for unique students suspended, we had about 10,085 total different students suspended last school year, for a total of 23,685 suspensions and a suspension rate of 13.1%. Here you can see suspensions by grade, and this is for the entire school year. Our top grades are 9th grade, 6th grade, 7th and 8th grade, and then we have all the suspensions at all of those grade levels. And then we also have our year-to-date administrator alternatives to suspension. So these are when administrators are engaging with a student after a referral is submitted as part of the discipline process. The administrator is using a different disciplinary practice depending on the code of conduct that does not involve suspension. You can see last year we had 1,460 conferences, 12,659 administrative councils, 871 detentions, 754 mediations, 117 referral to the building intervention team, 134 repairing harm circles, and 253 restorative conferences. And again, going forward, we'll present all that data as a month-to-month comparison from year to date from this previous school year. Our fourth focus area is developing staff integration of courageous conversations about race. For this school year, we're going to be continuing to facilitate that courageous conversations about race exploration. That is their one-day introductory seminar that all MPS staff members are required to attend. We have their leadership experiences and administrative development series, or LEADS as they call it, for school-based leaders to attend. And continuing with that district equity leadership team, or DELT, for district leaders, providing district and school level book cohorts around a variety of books, and addressing bias within vulnerable decision points when we are making decisions throughout the school day. So that will look like our monthly DELT meeting with individuals from all district departments and a coach from the Courageous Conversations About Race vendor themselves. Continuation and expansion of that LEAD series with SSTs and district leaders. And we are doing the facilitation of the Courageous Conversations About Race exploration with our certified district facilitators for this school year. So that work is going to be specifically handled at the district level with that team of certified facilitators. Lastly, as mentioned in the report, we have created this discipline response team. This is a team of individuals from a variety of teams that have a hand in the space around district climate and culture. This team had a 2-day retreat at the end of July to work on collaboration of our 30, 60, 90-day plan and to kind of talk across departments about what work we have, what schools we're supporting, and how we can better work together. This team will continually meet throughout the school year to ensure that collaboration continues. This team includes individuals from Student Services, CBIS, Department of Equity, Access and Inclusion, Restorative Practices, Black and Latino Male Achievement, Gender and Identity Inclusion, Violence Prevention Program, and within Specialized Services, the program support teachers. And then our next steps for August specifically is we have our 30, 60, 90-day plans being implemented. We are considering 30 days to be August 1st. Throughout the month of August, we have 9 CCAR, Courageous Conversations About Race Exploration seminars. I believe 3 have occurred. We have 6 more remaining, but we have 9 scheduled throughout the month of August. Those mentioned toolkits have been shared with discipline champions and school-based administrators at early start schools. Continue that sharing with traditional start schools in a couple of weeks. And then school-based PBIS Tier 1, building intervention team, and those student discipline committees are forming and meeting for the first time in August. Thank you for our time. That concludes our presentation, and we're now open for questions.
Thank you, administration. And before we go to committee, Madam Secretary, is there any public testimony on this item?
Madam Chair, we do have one speaker that is on the platform registered to speak on this item. Would you like to go to the speakers?
If that's okay with the rest of the committee? Yes.
Okay, great. The one speaker that we have on the platform is Angela Lucas Foley. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Angela Lucas Foley, Lucas space Foley.
Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Posley, Chair Garcia, and directors. I come to you this evening as a white educator and as a proud member of RWE. While there are many concerns about this beginning update of the school year, I'm focusing tonight's testimony on follow-through from our Board of Directors. Our systems that serve our students are broken. This includes the accountability that is asked of every elected official seated tonight. At the June 7th CASE meeting, directors requested a full plan for the 2022-2023 school year, details of the discipline survey completed by staff, and details of what was being done to target schools and grade levels with the highest suspension rate, including a list of professional development for these schools. Director Taylor specifically requested a student cohort to look at root causes for those students that have multiple suspensions. See minute marker 1 hour, 26 minutes of the broadcast. Director Garcia specifically requested the creation and presentation of a culture and climate plan referenced as the district discipline action plan by Matthew Boswell, including a detailed timeline prior to the start of the early start school year. See 1 hour, minute marker 1 hour, 30 minutes, 30 seconds of broadcast. What is the update on this important request? The public would like to see this plan as well. Director Simpson specifically mentioned the importance of building bridges to work on these issues, in quotes. See minute marker 1 hour, 29 minutes, 30 seconds. What better way to build bridges with the community by providing the above reference information as requested by you to the public? Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, that completes public testimony for this item.
Thank you. Yes, so now I would like to go to committee members. Does anyone wish to make comments or ask any questions? I see Director O'Halloran.
I do have a few questions. On slide 8, it says page 8, there will be volunteer opportunities that we will recruit community organizations to volunteer in identified schools. I was wondering how the volunteer opportunities would be publicized and how we can engage if there's any, like, I know I have a lot of retired administrators and teachers in my church. So like if there are groups that are interested in volunteering and stepping up for these opportunities, how would they go about seeing the myriad needs that we have?
Oh,
Administration.
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, Matthew Boswell, Senior Director of Department of Student Services. Yes, so we will put out an ask for all community organizations. As we have in the past, we have not gotten great response in terms of volunteering, but at identified schools. So we will do that once again, and we are more than open to any suggestions of any organizations in which we should reach out to. The acts would be rubber band in between 10 to 20 hours per week. That's maybe an hour or two per day, and identify schools working on identified goals with identified plans for identified students. So any assistance that can be provided in that area would be greatly appreciated and very well received.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Vice Chair O'Halloran?
Yeah, if it would be possible for a specific, like a one pager with the exact type of help you're looking for and the identified schools that could be provided to board members and the public, that would be really helpful so that I know when I'm soliciting, if I'm speaking with organizations, I can speak credibly about the opportunities that we're looking for. And like just having that it's a 10 to 20 hour a week ask, just being really specific on what we're asking for before we go out. So if you could email that to me, I would appreciate it. I have other questions, but I'll let other people go.
All right. In administration, is that something that can be done, the one pager?
Yeah, absolutely, Director Garcia, as well as Director O'Halloran. Absolutely, we are partnering with Parent and Community Partnership. They do run the volunteering process for our district, so that is already in the work. So it will be a communication blast, and we'll be more than happy to send that to Director O'Halloran upon its completion. But we just want to make sure that it gets out to our community in the most effective way. This is a department that works with volunteering efforts as part of their responsibility for Milwaukee Public Schools. So we have tapped into that department, as well as we'll provide the act in terms of the information that we share with the community, with the board of directors, for any help that you can solicit as well around this important initiative.
Thank you. All right, Director Leonard.
Thank you. I have lots of questions, actually, so I'm going to try to not overburden us with too much of this. But I have to just be very honest. I think that I don't know if you're going to be able to answer these questions, but I think it's time to start asking some tougher questions. I go into some buildings, and in fact, I was with Dr. Posley and Dr. Cotton just yesterday. And I was thrilled to see something happening in Alliance School where they were taking their freshmen and doing a restorative justice type circle or no harm circle, more of a training kind of exercise with freshmen. And what thought I had in my mind was, how many schools and how many leaders in our buildings are actually applying some of these types of processes that really could make quite a difference district-wide. And when I see some schools doing a great job, and I see their disproportionality rates dropping, when I look at those buildings individually, I know we're not going to show that in public. I understand that. My question becomes, how are we dealing with the buildings that are not doing that? And I think we just have to ask some tough questions on what's the plan on where we're going with this, because we need to see some wholesale change. We actually had an increase in suspension numbers, not a significant number, but we had an increase last year as compared to before that time. So anyway, let me ask that question first.
Administration.
Chair Garcia, Director Leonard, and members of the committee, John Jagman, District Discipline Manager. So we can get you the exact numbers and which schools I want to speak off the cuff here, but we do have administrators within the discipline process selecting their engagement with restorative practices. every administrator in the district has attended that 1 or the 2-day introduction to restorative practices. So in terms of which schools and the number, we could get that to you. One of our focuses for this school year is going to be to engage administrators specifically in what is their role in supporting restorative practices. And we're aligning that with some of those focus schools as well.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Director Leonard?
Thank you. I also just want to speak for our speaker. So I was not the person that asked for some of those reports. So when can we get those reports that you spoke of, the parent survey, culture survey, and there was something else and I forget. I apologize.
It was the discipline action plan.
Okay.
Administration?
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, we can work with governance tomorrow even. We have those results and we have the draft plan. It's drafted. We want to make sure we can get any feedback from yourselves as well. So I can work with governance as early as tomorrow to get that to you.
Thank you. Director Simpson.
Thank you so much. So with there's the 30, 60, 90-day plan that you spoke of. Could you just give a little more detail about that? I'm sorry if I missed it in the information we were sent, but if you could just speak a little bit more about what that means.
Administration.
Chair Garcia, members of the committee. So yes, the 30, 60, 90 is each of those groups in that discipline response team created what is their work to support schools in the first 30 days, the 60, and then 90. And again, we're doing the 30 is August 1st. So it's kind of an amalgamation, it's putting those all together and saying, as a discipline response team, here's our work. If it's pushing into schools, if it's sending these resources, but what does the support towards schools look like from each of those?
Any follow-up, Director Simpson?
Yeah, thank you for that clarity. I appreciate it. The other question I had, one of the questions I had is regarding staffing going into this year for like social workers, guidance counselors, psychologists, restorative practices, coaches. Do we have a sense of, how many vacancies we have for those, how well staffed our buildings are? Because none of this work can happen without that support staff there to assist.
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, that's what we are currently working on now. I have a template of all the vacancies that are in our early start schools. And I can tell you school by school, those kinds of things, but we do have that ready and available.
Maybe if you could send, sorry.
What? Go ahead.
No, maybe if you could just send that to us, that would be
We'll be more than
helpful
happy to do so.
Yeah, that'd be helpful information.
Thank you. And Director Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. I believe Director Leonard hit on some of my questions about the numbers and the data. If I heard correctly, that information will be available tomorrow.
Chair Garcia and members of the committee, correct. The plan, the responses to the discipline survey and all of that, we do have, and we can share it with governance tomorrow. Yes.
All right. Thank you. And also, Chair Garcia, some of the questions that was asked, I won't reiterate them, but they were questions that was asked as us as board of directors. And so if that information is going to be provided tomorrow, can board governors ensure that those individuals that continuously ask these questions are giving that information as well too?
Governance?
Madam Chair, members of the committee. Yes, well, we can, as in the past, we can definitely share this information as requested.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
follow-up, Director Taylor?
No, I'll just wait on the information tomorrow. And if there's any questions, then I'll send follow-up, as well as wait for any other of the individuals that have spoken after they receive it for questions as well. Thank you, Chair Garcia. Thank you, administration.
Thank you. Vice Chair O'Halloran.
Thank you. I wanted to acknowledge that we did get a piece of written testimony. It is a constituent of mine, or at least I think she still is. And she just noted that over time, the disproportionality hasn't seemed to abate. It hasn't seemed to have gone down, despite the fact that we've, taken all these steps. The person who wrote in was curious. The data that was presented today, is it my understanding that this is meant to be like a benchmark from what happened? Because it's presented without context of like what has been happening over time. But I was reading it more as this is our first year back where we were mostly in person. So am I supposed to be reading this as the kind of quote unquote new normal, and we are going to take steps to hopefully take that down from here? Otherwise, is there a reason why we wouldn't have seen like historical trends with the data that was presented?
Administration.
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, correct, Director O'Halloran, you kind of answered your own question there. Yeah, like last year, we're going to use as the baseline going forward. So each month this school year, we'll be reporting out the data by race and by grade level as last year and compared to last school year, because otherwise we're going back really 3 years, because we had the year of virtual learning and then even the year before that when we ended March 13th or whatever. The comparison, the further we go back, we can't really compare. So that's only why we presented last year's school data here, because that is going to be the baseline throughout this school year.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Vice Chair O'Halloran?
I do have one more question, if that is okay with the committee. On slide 10, there's listed that there will be engagement of regional leadership and school leaders with monthly data evaluation. And I was wondering, does that include targets for specific schools? Like now that we have last year's quote unquote new normal, have we set out, these are the targets that we're trying to get down to? And if we don't see movement, do we have specific, I guess, markers that would be like a red flag and we really have to intervene in this situation? Does that make sense? Like maybe we can't release that data to the public because we feel like it would unfairly target a specific school. But I'm just wondering, have we set out measurable goals? And do we have kind of a mechanism to say, if we haven't met it by this date, we need to really reevaluate this approach and intervene before the end of the year?
Thank you. Administration.
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, correct. Part of what the work is going to be is our data dashboard was slightly aligned differently. So we are going to have school administrators every month go on there and pull data and submit the data and their reflection as the school leader. And one of those metrics is going to be looking at their implementation of alternative suspension and supporting behaviors proactively. So, for example, within the code of conduct, we're still going to have situations that may threaten staff or student safety that we have to follow the code of conduct, but chronic disruption is the behavior we use as an example. School leaders will specifically be looking at chronic disruption and how they are engaging a lot of these other tools, and then they're going to submit that looking at past for last year, even last month, and reflect going forward, how can we implement more of these? So that is definitely the work that we want our school leaders to be doing on a monthly basis.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Director Halloran?
I feel like I keep asking, so I can defer to someone else.
Director Simpson.
Thank you. I guess, well, one of my questions was, the Director O'Halloran kind of talked about goals, for specific schools, which is critically important, but do we also have goals like as a district, like these are, in a year or in 2 years? Do we have kind of these long-term goals of what we'd like to see, really for a number of things? One would be just that level of suspension, but also like where are we at with professional development and our courageous conversations? Do we have some goals for like the number of staff that's participating in some of this, or what we want our data to look like in 6 months, a year?
Administration.
Chair Garcia, members of the committee. So each school within their school improvement plan has identified a goal and an action step around climate and school suspension. So we can work with the school improvement team to get that. I don't have that. It doesn't directly come from us, but each school is identifying a goal within that. And then we are continuing the integration of courageous conversations about race, but the goals are at the school level in terms of their culture and climate. And it's right in this.
Any follow-up, Director Simpson?
Well, it just would seem to me that as a district, we might want to set some goals in terms of bringing that level of disproportionality down. I mean, do we have, I just think it would be wise to sort of set some goals for what we'd like to see what we would like to see our data look like at some point. I would imagine schools would be doing that as well.
Administration.
Chair Garcia, members of the committee. Yeah, correct. Sorry if I missed that the first time. We have set within our district plan a goal of lowering disproportionality by 5% each year. So again, that looks different at every school, especially due to the racial segregation in the city of Milwaukee. But at the district level, that is the goal that we're setting up, is to go with that at 5% per school year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Leonard.
Thank you. I guess, okay, I sort of running off of Director Simpson's question. So you are looking, so buildings have their goals. And so you're reiterating that even though we have a 5% global goal for our district, that sort of gets lost in the wash at times. I'm just curious as to, so you're assuring us that you're going to also have buildings have a disproportionality number that they're trying to get down to also?
Chair Garcia, members of the committee. So it gets a little bit more nuanced, where you have a school that might be 97% Black enrollment. Their disproportionality is going to look a lot different than a school with 25%. So the goals in the school improvement plan pertain to their action steps. So a school may have a goal of 80% of their staff completing this professional development that's off. And that's their school goal, that through they did the 5 whys and root cause. That school is identifying that as a root cause to it. It might be X number of staff complete a book study with Goldie Muhammad and integrate her framework into 3 of their lesson plans. So again, it's more nuanced, where that will feed towards the district goal, but each school does not have a disproportionality goal. It's just, you can't really do that at the school level.
Garcia, members of the committee, one of the things that they talked about in the 30, 60, 90-day plan was the idea of the monthly administrators conversation around looking at evaluating what is happening. That is also another time that they will look at, the leaders will look at what is taking place in schools and what is happening around suspensions, disproportionality within that school setting with the building leader.
Thank
New
you.
to the plan to be able to enforce and to be able to know what's happening in order to get those numbers where they need to be.
Oh, that's great to hear. Director Leonard, any follow-up?
Not with that, just a couple of things, and then I'll be done. I've taken the opportunity to talk to as many people as I can about this issue in particular. And one piece of advice that I received from a large number of parent coordinators was that they felt that they were given more latitude to be used to draw in parents into their buildings and create those relationships. They believe that that would be a major factor in reducing a lot of that stress that goes on between parents and school staff, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one piece there. The other one that I've received from a number of people, and I said I would not put them under the bus, so I'll be quiet about that. But they definitely felt that we need to do everything in our power to grow our own. And I would agree with that. We saw one yesterday, Dr. Posley, that was ready to be a teacher from Alliance, she was definitely engaging and showed quite a lot of leadership skills. But anyway, that's the other thing. So I'll be quiet now. Thank you very much.
Administration.
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, one of the things that we are truly committed to is growing our own. I'll be the first to say, Director Leonard, we saw a leader on yesterday. I mean, a leader. The young lady was really focused on the work at hand. And that is something that we are doing throughout the district. We have a number of different high schools within the district where we're looking at, and where we have our teacher education program that's filtering through those locations. So that is something that we got to pick up on. The whole piece around the parent coordinator, that is something that that we have all taken note of, the team, what has been shared, and that will be shared with Christy Stone and her team as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Simpson, do you still have a question?
No, that's okay. Thank you.
All right. And if I could pass the gavel.
So noted.
Director Garcia.
Yes. Well, I just wanted to really commend administration for the folks that are part of the response team. I think that, involving the different groups that are, part of the educational experience of our students, whether, that was the list that we saw. I think that really is a good, representation of folks that are working with our students at, at different capacities. Because I think they're bringing important angles that I think from previous initiatives that we have taken, maybe that this will be a little bit stronger, I think. And I really do like the idea that, there's a 30, 60, 90-day plan that is bringing, first of all, the folks together to really talk about, this broader issue that we're trying to deal with at a systemic level. So I guess my question to administration is, can you just talk a little bit more about what does that plan look like? Or can it be access to? I think we would be really interested in even having, that be reported at the PACE committee, in congruency with the timeline that the reports are given, and really hear from these partners that are, rolling up their sleeves and helping us address, the issue that has, been plaguing our system for so long.
Administration.
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, I can highlight a couple of things that we've outlined here. First, wanted to mention that going forward, like last school year, we will have some schools kind of be highlighted with some of the work that they are doing. And we also are going to have members of the discipline response team join us and share some of their work, and we'll rotate through that as well. So we can hear specifically, instead of us just capturing as a flyby these different discipline response teams, have them attend as well. So within the 30, 60, 90-day plan, which is outlined with a calendar more in our more official plan, are things like what monthly professional development is provided, having district office hours from the different discipline response teams, getting in front of all school leaders if it's during regional time or it's during a climate leadership institute we are looking to formalize, how data is being used each month, our DELT and LEADS series, engaging in different book studies, and really kind of our outline is creating a positive school culture and reducing disciplinary actions start day one with focused action steps at the beginning of the school year and consistently maintained throughout the year. So part of that plan, working with Office of Administration, is each month get in front of principals and highlight one portion or practice from the toolkit and present that to school leaders, and then school leaders will take that content and then present it back at the school level. So throughout the school year, 10 months of the school year, all principals and then all staff members will get that direct touch point on a practice. If it's how to have a restorative conversation in the back of class, if it's how to use a buddy classroom system, or if it's a specific community building strategy you can use in the middle of the year when we kind of start to drag. That's all part of the plan that we are outlining, and really to have that proactive and consistent messaging from all those teams. So all those teams we saw listed are messaging the same thing. I'm going to a school, Mr. Boswell's on a different team. He's aware that I'm going to support that school, and he can kind of connect the dots saying, I was there yesterday, here's the support that they need.
Excellent. Thank you. And again, I just can't emphasize enough the importance of that collaborative piece. Because I think, like I said, everyone brings a very interesting, important element to tackling this issue. So thank you, administration.
I pass the gavel back. Do you have any follow-up, Director Garcia?
No, I will take the gavel. Thank you.
Okay.
So noted.
All right, Director Simpson, question.
Thank you. This is what I was going to say before, but I decided I'm going to say it. So I just wanted to acknowledge the work that the teachers do in their classroom. You know, I know that, you know, it takes a lot of work to build that culture and climate in a classroom. And sometimes you're there and you just feel so alone in the struggle to make this all happen. So I just want to acknowledge the hard work that our staff does every day to work on these issues that we're talking about. A friend of mine kind of explained how you start as a teacher with sort of feeling like you have a little purse of tools that you can use for, you know, classroom management issues. And, you know, over the years you build like a nice suitcase, a big luggage full of it. And I just think that, you know, the support that we're providing will help build that toolbox for staff, but at the same time, you know, just acknowledging that it's challenging, especially coming off from COVID as we've been. It takes a lot of work to kind of make that magic happen. So just wanted to acknowledge that our staff is working, you know, really hard to do their best.
Absolutely. Thank you, Director Simpson. Administration, any comments to that?
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, we echo those same sentiments. One of the things that we did this year is to make sure that during our 5-day orientation for all of our new teachers, we made sure that the toolbox was introduced so that, you know, that teachers brand new could walk in the door with that support that's needed. And also we talked about the different professional development opportunities that we have for veteran teachers to partake in throughout the year as well. So those are kind of things that we will continue to move forward, and also with reiterating the idea that having the school leader on board, which will also work through that as well, to give different things that we're going to do from a monthly basis, other tools that can be added to the toolbox as we go forward. And so we want everyone to have that suitcase that you talk about around discipline to support the learning in schools on a daily basis.
Thank you, administration. Is there any further discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 2, which is a report with possible action on student restraint and seclusion. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Will administration please present the item?
Chair Garcia and members of the committee, the item before you on this evening's agenda is the annual report on student restraint and seclusion. Matthew Boswell is here with me and will provide an overview of the data from the 2021-22 school year. Following the overview, we'll be prepared to answer any questions that you may have. Mr. Boswell.
Yes. So good afternoon once again, Chair Garcia, members of the committee. Matthew Boswell, Senior Director of Department of Student Services. Wisconsin Act 118 revised Wisconsin State Statute 118.305, law governing seclusion and restraint in schools. The revision went into effect on March 4th, 2020. The law changes in the law now require us to disaggregate the data by reporting the incidence of seclusion separately from restraint. The total number of students involved and the total number of special education students involved is also disaggregated for seclusion and restraint. The deadline for reporting this to the board is now October 1st, which we are clearly in compliance. The board is now required to submit the data to DPI annually by December 1st. During the 2021-22 school year, There were a total of 41 students, including 21 students with disabilities, involved in 44 incidents of seclusion. There were 281 students involving 165 students with disability involved in 417 incidents of physical restraint. There were 461 incidents of seclusion and restraint combined, including a total of 322 students. 159 of the 322 students were in grades 6 to 12. The remaining were fifth grade and under. In comparison to previous years, the data is as such. In comparison to the 21-22 school year, the other full school year in direct comparison, we had a total of 844 restraint and seclusion, 91 incidents of seclusion, and 753 incidents of restraint. So in comparison, you can clearly see the 461 incident of restraint and seclusion was cut in half by our principal. Additionally, I just want to say to all of our school-based principals, I really appreciate the focus that they put on this area. We have trained them since the change of Wisconsin State Statute 118.305 in reference to how they document incidents of restraint and seclusion, how to document incidents of restraint and seclusion in Infinite Campus, and notification protocols. They have done an excellent job in doing such. And as you can see, in comparison to our last full year of regular, what I would say, a school operating before the pandemic, we had 844, we now have 461, and that is cut in half. In comparison to the additional larger school district in the state of Wisconsin, let's just say Madison, in 2020, 2021, Madison had 90 incidents of seclusion and 338 incidents of restraint incidents. In 2020, 2021, MPS had 5 incidents of seclusion and 25 incidents of restraint for a total of 30. In comparison to the last full academic year prior to the pandemic, Madison Public Schools in 2019-2020 had 610 incidents of seclusion and 649 incidents of restraint for over 1,200 incidents of seclusion and restraint. In 2019-2020, MPS had 844. So I just want to just clearly detail to the PACE committee the work that has went into training, the response from our principals, and I just want to make sure that, and not this committee in itself, you know, our principals frequently hear about all the things they have to improve on. I just want to make sure that I let every principal in the Milwaukee Public Schools know I appreciate them for working on this very difficult task. It is very time consuming, and it's a situation where you have to know the difference of protecting someone in terms of their safety and the safety of others versus putting them in situations where you may hurt them as individuals trying to protect them. Our principals and our safety assistants, as well as our teachers, have done an excellent job in such instances. So I just want to bring that to the PACE committee's attention. Thank you. At this time, we'll take any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Do committee members have any questions or comments? Let's start off with Vice Chair O'Halloran.
Thank you. And thank you for the context, because that was going to be one of my questions. It's hard to know where we fall when I see information presented without understanding what it's like in other districts. And so I did want to note that it says we are required to conduct an IEP team meeting within 10 days of the second time seclusion or restraint is used. So I was just wondering what the steps are, because it does look like there is a kind of higher rate for students with disabilities. Kind of what is the next step as far as informing families, not just documenting it in the system, but how we bring kind of the families in on that conversation as well.
Administration?
Director Chair Simpson, Director O'Halloran, members of the committee, Jennifer Mims Howe, Chief Academic Officer. In the case for students with disability, you're correct. They have the 10 days to have the meeting. During that time, a parent receives the information that comes from the school regarding the incident of the seclusion or restraint. The IEP team can hold a meeting, talk about the goals, and also to talk about the adjustment for the seclusion and restraint, and also develop another plan if needed once it's reviewed. And in many cases, what happens is the goals are adjusted, and then during the review revise process, in many cases, the school works on other, other strategies to make sure that that student can be supported so the seclusion or restraint does not have to be used.
Thank you. Follow-up, Vice Chair O'Halloran?
Thank you for that. So it says for the second time, are they informed even if are they informed after the first time as well, or is it just after the second time? Am I reading that correctly?
Administration?
Sorry, Chair Garcia, Vice President O'Halloran, members of the committee, you are reading it correctly. However, the IEP teacher or the case manager will normally inform the family each time it happens, again, to make sure that we can come up with the correct strategies to avoid seclusion and restraint in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Simpson.
Thank you. So there are some schools that have that are sort of like outliers. Their numbers are a little bit higher, especially in the use of restraint incidents. I was wondering, sometimes that can be a certain individual who just is going through a really difficult time. If we're looking at that data, do we know that information? Like, is this just somebody who is repeatedly having trouble, or are these, a number of different students? And then what steps might happen if we kind of notice that there's an uptick in numbers that doesn't match what most of the other schools have?
Administration.
So Chair Garcia, members of the committee, absolutely. So let's just say, for instance, you take a school like Fratney, they may have 22 incidents of restraint. Those 22 incidents of restraint was by 6 children. So that means that it was 6 children that maybe had multiple incidents, or it was children that had multiple incidents. The good thing about this data is we tap into and do sample assessment at schools, because what we want to align is that when the incident of restraint or seclusion take place, are the right processes are being followed. And I'm happy to report at all schools, in terms of our sample, all processes were being followed in terms of documentation, in terms of contact to parent, in terms of follow-up, definitely in terms of what Ms. Mims Howe detailed in terms of the IEP, putting in new goals, revising goals, check-in procedures, contact procedures, a confident building technique. I've seen all these things that are listed within Infinite Campus as well as children's IEP. So definitely the processes that we have trained our staff on are happening.
Thank you. Director Simpson, any follow-up?
No, thank you for kind of just walking through that. I know sometimes, looking at those reports, those numbers can just seem, alarming when you think of restraining students. It's good to hear that, we're kind of watching to make sure that the right steps are being taken, and that we're really watching that to make sure that, that we're handling each and every situation appropriately.
Absolutely. Director Leonard.
So Director Simpson asked my question, but I also get the fun part to just mirror what you said, Mr. Boswell. I am very impressed at the significant drop, and as compared to Madison. I would like to see if possibly how those comparisons look at some of the other Big 5 district schools, just out of curiosity. But either way, that's kudos to you and your staff and all of the principals and staff members in buildings. Anyone who has ever had to restrain a student knows the emotional and physical toll it takes, and you really try to avoid that at all costs if you know what you're doing. So thank you very much.
Administration.
Thank you.
All right. And Madam Secretary, is there any public comment on this item?
Madam Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All right. Madam Secretary, what is the next item?
Madam Chair, that was the last item on this meeting's agenda.
Wow. All right. Well, there being no further business before this committee is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night.
Have a
Good night.
Have a great night, everybody. Have a